On a gloomy morning in September 1933, a wealthy Manhattan lawyer named Frederick Barber Campbell walked into the Chase National Bank on Pine Street. He didn't look like a revolutionary. He was wearing a tailored suit. He had a high society pedigree, and he was there for one simple reason. He wanted his property. Doc Campbell handed the teller a withdrawal slip for 27 gold bars he had stored in the bank's vault. That gold was worth about $200,000 in today's money. It was his savings, his safety net. The teller looked at the slip, then looked up at Campbell and shook his head. "I can't give this to you, sir," he said. Campbell didn't scream. He didn't pull a gun. He simply sued the bank. He argued that the government had no constitutional right to seize his property just because the economy was in a rough patch. He thought the law would protect him. He was wrong. Instead of getting his gold back, Frederick Campbell became the first American indicted for the crime of owning a shiny yellow metal. The federal government didn't just deny his request. They threatened him with 10 years in prison. They publicly shamed him as a hoarder. Think about that. One day you are a prudent saver protecting your family. The next day you are a criminal enemy of the state. Most people know this happened. We've seen the black and white photos of headlines from 1933, but here is the part the history books gloss over. They tell you this was a one-time emergency measured during the Great Depression. They tell you it was necessary to save the dollar. But I dug into the archives and I found something else. I found a pattern, a playbook. And when you look at the financial numbers flashing on the screens of Wall Street today, you realize something terrifying. The conditions that forced the government to seize Frederick Campbell's gold in 1933, they aren't just back, they are worse. Welcome to the sequel nobody wants to watch. This is how the great gold confiscation happens. Again, and why this time they won't need to knock on your door to take it. To understand the future, we have to look at the crime scene of the past. Why did President Roosevelt really sign Executive Order 60-102? If you ask a standard economist, they'll say people were hoarding gold, which stopped the money from circulating, which strangled the economy. So FDR had to force the gold out of hiding to jumpstart trade. That sounds nice, it sounds heroic. But if you follow the money, you see the colder, uglier truth. The United States government was broke. In 1933, the U.S. had massive debts from World War I and the consumption of the Roaring '20s. These debts were denominated in dollars, but the dollar was tied to gold. $20.67 equaled 1 ounce of gold. This was a golden handcuff. The government couldn't just print money to pay its bills, because for every dollar they printed, they needed gold in the vault to back it. They were trapped. They had two choices. Choice A, default on the debt. Tell the bondholders, sorry, we can't pay you. That destroys the country's credit rating and causes chaos. Choice B, rig the game. FDR chose option B. Here is the trick, and it's brilliant in a sinister way. First, you force everyone to hand over their gold in exchange for paper dollars. You pay them the official price, $20.67 an ounce. Americans, being patriotic and fearful, lined up. They handed over their family heirlooms, their coins, their savings. The government collected tons of physical metal. Once the gold was safely locked in the government vaults, FDR did the twist. In 1934, he signed the Gold Reserve Act. With the stroke of a pen, he revalued gold from $20.67 to $35 an ounce. Do you see what happened there? The government confiscated the gold at a low price and then immediately declared it was worth 69% more. Instantly, the government's balance sheet exploded in value. They created profit out of thin air. They used that profit to print more money and service their debts. It wasn't a safety measure. It was a bank robbery. But because they owned the bank, they called it monetary policy. Frederick Campbell and millions of others were robbed of 69% of their purchasing power overnight. Their paper dollars bought less, while the gold they used to own skyrocketed in value, safely out of their reach in Fort Knox. Now, fast forward to today. I want you to look at a number, $34 trillion. That is the current U.S. national debt. If you stack $100 bills, that debt pile would reach into outer space. But the debt isn't the scary part. The scary part is the interest. Because interest rates have risen, the U.S. government is now paying more just to service the interest on its debt than it spends on the entire military. We are in a debt spiral. The government has to borrow more money just to pay the interest on the money it already borrowed. This is the exact same mathematical trap they faced in 1933, but on a scale that FDR couldn't even imagine. So the government again has two choices. Choice A, default. Collapse the global economy. Choice B, rig the game again. They need to devalue the dollar to wipe out the real value of that debt. They need to print trillions. But there is a problem. Gold is the whistleblower. When they print money, gold goes up. It signals to the world that the currency is dying. It allows people to opt out of the system. If everyone moves their money into gold, the banking system collapses and the government loses control. They cannot allow that. They need to lock the exits. But here is where the investigator in me has to warn you. Do not expect a man in a trench coat to knock on your door and ask for your gold coins. I read through the forums, the prepper blogs. Everyone is worried about door-to-door confiscation. They are burying tubes of silver in their backyards. While that is romantic, it is fighting the last war. The government in 1933 was analog. They needed physical metal. The government of 2024 is digital. They don't want your heavy, yellow rocks. They want your value. Here's the modern playbook. It is cleaner, faster, and much harder to fight. Step 1. The digital trap. In 1933, most people held physical gold. Today, most gold owners don't own gold at all. They own ETFs. They own unallocated gold in a bank account. They own digital tokens. If you look at the terms of service for major gold ETFs, there are often clauses about force majeure or government directives. If the order comes down, the government doesn't need to raid your house. They just send a PDF to the brokerage. Click. Your gold ETF is liquidated. They will pay you in cash, probably at a fair market price determined the day before the crisis. You will get dollars in your account. You will feel whole for a moment. But then, just like in 1934, the real price of gold will reset. The currency will devalue. You will be left with paper that is burning up, while the institution keeps the real asset. Step 2. The windfall tax. This is the most likely scenario for physical owners. Let's say you are smart. You have physical coins in a safe at home. They can't click a mouse and take them, but you have to sell them eventually, right? You can't buy groceries with a gold Krugerrand at the self-checkout. The government knows this. So they pass a windfall profits tax. They will say gold owners have profited unfairly from the economic crisis while working families suffer. It is only fair they pay their share. They could slap an 80% or 90% tax on the sale of gold. Technically, they haven't confiscated anything. You still own the gold. You can look at it. You can hold it. But the moment you try to convert it back into the economy, the government takes the majority of the value. They strip the meat and leave you the bone. Step 3. The CBDC net. This is the final nail in the coffin. Central bank digital currencies. When cash is eliminated and replaced by a programmable government coin, every transaction is tracked. If you try to sell your gold to a neighbor, how does he pay you? If he pays you in CBDC, the algorithm sees it. Suspicious transfer. The system could automatically deduct the 90% windfall tax the second the money hits your wallet. Or worse, they could blacklist your wallet for trading in unregulated commodities. It effectively demonetizes your gold without them ever having to touch it. It becomes a shiny paperweight that you can't spend. It sounds dystopian, I know, but we have already seen dry runs of this. Look at the sanctions on Russia. Look at the frozen bank accounts during the Canadian trucker protests. The financial system is now a weapon. So is it hopeless? Should we just give up? Absolutely not. History shows us that every time the government builds a wall, the market builds a tunnel. Frederick Campbell lost his case, but many Americans in 1933 didn't turn in their gold. They kept it quiet. They kept it within the family, and eventually, their children inherited a fortune. The key to surviving the modern playbook is to understand the new rules. First, realize that paper gold is not gold. If you can't hold it, you don't own it. If your gold is a row on a spreadsheet managed by a bank, you are the low-hanging fruit. Second, privacy is the new premium. The danger isn't just theft, it's identification. In a world of digital surveillance, the most valuable asset is anonymity. This is why small denomination coins, gold and silver that can be used for small private transactions, become vital. You don't want a 400-ounce bar that requires a bank wire to sell. You want something you can trade for food, fuel, or services peer-to-peer below the radar of the digital dragnet. Third, look outside the system. The world is bigger than the U.S. jurisdiction. There are vaults in Singapore, in Switzerland, in places that do not answer to the U.S. Treasury. Diversification isn't just about buying different stocks, it's about political geography. The scary truth is that the government is coming for the purchasing power of the middle class. The debt makes it inevitable. They will try to take it through inflation, through taxation, and yes, through financial repression. That looks a lot like confiscation. But they rely on your compliance. They rely on you staying in their digital pen. In 1933, they bet that Americans would do what they were told, and for the most part, they were right. But you have the benefit of hindsight. You have the history book. You know how the movie ends. The question is, when the digital order comes down, will you be Frederick Campbell, fighting a losing battle in court? Or will you be the ghost in the system, the one who saw the trap, stepped aside, and kept your freedom intact? The Gold War is coming. But this time, the battlefield is your bank account.